Hello and welcome to Warframe. My name's Todd, also known as MajMech, and this is of course Warframe. And of course this is the last episode I'll probably be doing for a bit. Um, we're of course going to be talking about builds in this episode, as we have been for the past few episodes. This episode of course focuses on the final of my Warframes that I would like to showcase, and also the final weapon. I'm showcasing, of course, my main man here. He might look a little bit different to some because he's got an alternate helmet on, but we're talking about Harrow, or Harrow, however you want to pronounce his name. Harrow is a fantastic support Warframe, so we're just going to pull him up here. This is our good boy Harrow. He's a fantastic support frame. He kind of falls into league with Warframes such as Trinity and Oberon. Effectively his looks. We'll go over those real quick. He's got the Suffragan helmet on, normal skin. He's got the Harrow Noble animation set. The colors are, of course, the same as previously shown. Attachments are the Edo attachments. Oh, I forgot an ephemera as well. We'll equip that on him. Um, so the Edo attachments I've got attached on him. You can see the knee plates and the chest plates and whatnot. I quite like those Edo Prime set. I quite like it. It's fancy, and I really like it on my Warframes. The Regalia, no difference there. Sandana is, of course, the Repla Sandana. I do like my Repla Sandana. It's a nice cape. So yeah, that's effectively my Harrow, at least what he looks like. Now, for his build, Harrow's builds can typically focus on two things. Harrow's builds can either focus on duration or strength. There are some builds that focus on range, but those tend to be kind of lackluster because most of Harrow's abilities focus on, or function on ability range. So I'll go over his build first, and then I'll go over his abilities and how they kind of interact. So for his aura, I went with Corrosive Projection. You could also go with Energy Siphon if you so chose. Excellent slot is Power Drift. For some ability strength, we also have Prime Flow for max ability energy extra. We have Streamline for ability efficiency. We have Redirection for shield capacity. Primed Continuity for ability duration. Adaptation for damage resistance when damaged. Vigor for more shield capacity and a little bit of extra health. Intensify for ability strength. And Augur Message for ability duration. So I've of course focused this build specifically on duration. There are those that sacrifice range for duration, and if that's the way you want to go, that's fine. I just don't like having negative stats on a support Warframe because it just kind of feels bad. And I'll explain why when we get to his third ability, but for now, this is my basic build. You could, of course, improve it if you wanted to add more form onto him. Maybe instead of Vigor, you wanted to go with Vitality. Instead of Augur Message, you wanted to go Constitution. That's kind of up to you. I think this is a very well-rounded build for what it is, and I quite like running with this one. Alright, so let's go back out of here, and we'll go into abilities, and we'll talk about his abilities a little bit, while also listening to his weird, kind of staticky, like background noise that he kind of has for his Warframe page. His first ability is Condemn. You can kind of see a little play-by-play there. It effectively chains enemies in place while also increasing your max overshields. For each enemy hit, you have like a certain number of max overshields extra. Ooh, I forgot how. And yeah, there's a whole thing about Harrow and how to get him with the quest, and he's kind of like the quest is kind of like a horror quest, so that's why the background noise is so spooky there. So you'll have to forgive me for that. So yeah, that's his first ability, it chains enemies down, and effectively allows you to deal with them as that is. Maybe I should showcase this over in our upgrade screen here so we don't have to listen to that multiple times. But yeah, just a little bit of flavor for Harrow. He's got a lot of interesting backstory about him. So yeah, his first ability, chain down, getting overshields. Second ability is you spend overshields, or shields in general. You sacrifice all of them to gain the ability to heal your allies and yourself with the damage that you deal, plus you increase your reload speed and fire rate for all weapon types. So this is a fantastic ability. Like I said previously, if you do go to the negative range, this isn't going to be affected. Neither of the first nor the second abilities will be affected by negative ability range, because they function off of affinity range. His third ability is Thurible, so he channels this ability to effectively gain energy when dealing damage to enemies, or specifically when killing enemies and getting headshot kills on enemies. So it's a fantastic ability for regenerating energy, very similarly to Trinity's Energy Vampire. However, this one does require that you do damage to an enemy or kill it, specifically. Um, yeah, so it's not too bad. His final ability is Covenant. He does that fancy little spin that you just saw there. He protects nearby allies with an energy force that absorbs all damage and converts it into critical chance bonus for all those under the Covenant. Headshots are amplified even further. So effectively what this does is when the ability is first activated, it goes into a damage prevention mode, and it prevents all damage that you take for that time. Effectively, you make yourself invulnerable, I should say, and I believe you also make your allies invulnerable. And any damage taken is then added up into a multiplier for your critical hits. So this multiplier can reach, I believe, like 50% is the maximum, and for each bit of damage, it just racks it up. And we're going to show that one off massively, but effectively all of Harrow's abilities kind of work together in conjunction with each other, and I'll kind of show that off here. Of course, the weapon that we're going to be talking about here after I show off Harrow is my melee weapon, which will be a Zaw, unsurprisingly, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So the first part of showing this off is we're going to summon some Grineer, specifically some heavy gunners at maximum level that I can at the moment, which is 135, you can see. So we're just going to summon 8 of them. We'll simulate them. Hold on. Let me get energy first. So his first ability that I guess I should show off is Thurble. So effectively, as you can see on my screen, there's an energy per kill being racked up as I channel this ability. It's also draining my energy as we go along. So we'll get to 40 and we'll stop there. Effectively what this does is anything in the range of Thurble currently will gain energy if I kill something or get a headshot on something. Now we're going to remove that, we're going to kill the enemies, and we're going to re-simulate them. So this is going to go by kind of quickly because I need to make sure that I don't die instantly. So we're going to jump in, we're going to activate his 4th ability, and they're going to start racking up massive amounts of damage to us. We're going to activate his 2nd ability, and then we're going to activate his 1st ability. So effectively now we have 50% critical damage. Pop, 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 pop. Bang. And that is why Harrow is an amazing Warframe. As you can see, that was just the damage that I can buff not only myself with, but also any teammate is in range to gain the extra benefits of that. So effectively the way that worked was I activated my 4th ability, which allowed me to become effectively invincible as long as its duration went off. I activated my 2nd ability, which sacrificed my shields. I activated my 1st ability, which regained my shields into overshields. And then I shot them all once my invulnerability phase ended, while they were still chained up, and it was very easy to deal with those enemies. Those were max level enemies. I am still using my overpowered Rubico, but even without the overpowered Rubico, it still does a lot of damage. Let's see, can we show that off? Yeah, we can show that off. We're going to swap this to just a basic bog standard Rubico, and we're going to show off how much damage we can do. It is still a Rubico Prime, but it's not much different than a standard Rubico. So we're going to show that off. We're just going to jump straight in like we did previously. We're going to activate our damage reduction. Sacrifice what shields we have. Activate our 1st ability. Make sure that you chain up everything, of course. And we're just going to plug away at them. You can see that I'm still getting red crits. I'm not doing as much damage, which is kind of a shame. But I can, of course, just reactivate this. I can also activate my 1st ability through walls, so if I'm ever worried about that, I can just kind of pluck away at them. And this is an unmodded Rubico that I'm using to currently attack these enemies with, so I do want to put that out there. Even the fact that I'm doing as much damage as I am is kind of impressive. Let's wait for them to unfreeze. We'll activate our 4th ability again. We'll gain our critical hit again back. We'll chain them all up again. Try and make sure that they're all chained up. Sacrifice their shields. And we're just going to plug away at these guys. Don't want to... The big thing with Harrow is you never want to be caught without shields, and you can be very quickly, as you just saw. If you're caught without your shields, then it's pretty much over for you. Yeah, let's just kill these enemies because I get the feeling they're going to murder me here in a second. As you can see, I could do damage to these enemies with an unmodded Rubico, but it would take far too long. So in total, you gain a massive benefit of, how do I put this, of critical hit, and it really does stack up, especially against like bigger enemies. Let's use our good old friend the Jackal as an example. I think what we can do is we can simulate these enemies, and then we should be able to spawn in a Jackal. Oh, I didn't want to spawn in a live Jackal, but I guess that'll have to do for the time being. We're going to have lots of damage going out here, and we should be able to sacrifice our shields, re-chain up on any of these enemies. Make sure, like I stated, that you're not caught without your shields, because that'll kill you very quickly. And I don't know if my Condemn works against the Jackal. It does. Convenient. I want to make sure that we can get these guys without having to sacrifice our damage or invincibility here. Whoa. Let's go up here for a second. So once you've activated your 4th ability, it should be noted that you do have to wait for it to recharge, and there's about a 20-second cooldown on that. So you can't just become invincible forever. That's not really the point of Harrow anyway. The point of Harrow is kind of a dual-edged sword, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to channel our Thurible, because we haven't been keeping that up like we should. We're going to channel that, condemn that one, so we can kill them, get a little bit of energy back. Ooh. Is that? It's not. Let's try and chain that one up. Okay, I think the Jackal is the only thing here now. I don't think that there are any other enemies. So we're going to activate our 4th ability. Attack the Jackal here. The Jackal should do massive damage to us. Yes, it is. Chain it back up. Oh dear. So it does, I think, build up a damage, or like a resistance to being condemned, so it can't be condemned so many times in a row. Yeah. Also, bigger enemies do tend to break out of crowd control effects much quicker, so you do have to be aware of that side of things. The Jackal in the Simulacrum just also kind of reacts weirdly, but we do have our damage buff. Can't shoot it up. Oh dear. You know what? Let's just restart this, because I meant to do something entirely differently. Let's just kill that enemy. So what I meant to do is I meant to summon the Grenier and then have the Jackal be stationary so we could kind of plug away at it. Forgive me for messing that up there. Let's just pull up 8 Grenier heavy gunners. Confirm. Simulate them. Come in here. Go check. We'll summon one of those and we'll pause his AI. I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna hopefully... Oh, I guess it pauses AI for all the enemies in the Simulacrum. That's unfortunate. Regardless, you can still see that we're still getting a critical chance, and it does buff up our ability to do damage. And that was kind of what I was trying to show off, but the Simulacrum's not really working for me right now, which is kind of a shame. I should have done a little bit more testing on this beforehand, but that's my fault. We'll just kill all those enemies. Effectively, you can see that if played correctly, Harrow can be exceptionally effective. There are definitely caveats to his kit, though. There are things that would make him probably worse off than some of the other support frames in certain situations, but I enjoy playing him just because he's a very active frame, unlike a frame like Trinity, for instance, or Oberon, whose defenses and whatnot are very passive. Harrow's all about getting into fights and like using those fights to supplement his team, and that's kind of what makes him a good support frame. So that's why I enjoy Harrow. I hope I've done at least an okay job of showing off that you can do a ridiculous amount of damage. I showed off previously, of course, against those heavy gunners that getting red crits is fairly easy as Harrow, and yeah, I think that's kind of a good showcasing of what it is. Against bigger enemies like bosses and whatnot, Harrow can struggle because of course, his Condemn not being as strong as possible, and also the needs to generate more, how do I put it, overshield through using Condemn, so that is kind of a weakness, but not a massive one, and I think overall he can kind of deal with that effectively as long as you give him the correct kit. So yeah, that's Harrow. I guess we'll just move on to the melee weapon after I blundered that so badly. Our melee weapon that I'm going to talk about this time is, of course, a Zaw. So I will show off what Zaw I'm currently using and what Zaw that I've favored in the past. So my Zaw is effectively just a Jai 2, a Sikala, and a Dorkram. So that's a Link of a Jai 2, a Grip of Sikala, and a Strike of Dorkram. So effectively all this does is it doesn't buff the critical chance nor the status chance of this weapon. Because I didn't want to focus on one or the other, I wanted a good melee weapon that was balanced in both. But it does buff my attack speed massively, so my damage isn't very high for a heavy blade Zaw, but my attack speed is 1.25, which is, I'm pretty sure, the fastest heavy blade in the entire game. If there is a faster one, I'll have to take a look at that later, but I'm pretty sure that's as fast as it can get. So as you can see, I've buffed that attack speed even further. This is about as fast as I can make it. With the melee changes, there's been a lot of talk about heavy attacks and how they kind of function, and making weapons that kind of are specifically based around heavy attacks. However, I enjoy a weapon that you can just use whenever and also have heavy attack be a good side benefit. So that's kind of what I focused on. So this is my basic build. Because of my weapon being slash focused, I have built it for the viral element instead of corrosive, just purely because slash plus viral means that you can effectively reduce the enemy's health and then attack the health directly, meaning that you're just going to do a ridiculous amount of damage to your enemies. And I will show that off shortly. But effectively the stance for my weapon, I always use Tempo Royale on heavy blades. I just prefer it. I enjoy those combos greatly, and the changes to melee weapons haven't changed that in the slightest. I still enjoy it a lot. I have Prime Pressure Point for damage, Prime Fury for attack speed, Berserker for even more attack speed, Condition Overload for extra damage. So effectively the way a Condition Overload works, and Condition Overload is probably the strongest melee mod, I think, in my opinion, is every status that you apply to an enemy increases your damage by 120%. That's just flat out 120% extra damage. So considering that we have 4 elements on our weapon, we can inflict 4 statuses, and that means that we can have 120% times 4 if we have all 4 of our statuses on the enemy. So that's impressive and very important when thinking about building a melee weapon, because status weapons tend to be very strong. I have Vicious Frost for status chance and cold. I have Virulent Scourge for toxin and status chance, which of course makes viral. I have Quickening. This mod has just recently changed, of course, with the melee update, and now adds attack speed and plus combo chance. And then I have Life Strike as my last mod. Life Strike changed, of course, with the melee. It changes to just be 20% of a heavy attack. So you can activate that whenever just by activating a heavy attack. So melee weapons in general are very strong because of their combos, and I'll go over that in just a second as well. But I also do want to talk about, I have on my melee weapon just a standard Exodia Contagion. I haven't even upgraded it in any way, but I'll go over what that does when we're talking about combos. So combos for melee weapons are kind of important. We're going to pull out our melee weapon. So this is what my Zaw, of course, looks like. It's very standard for a Zaw. The major thing you might notice when I'm playing with my Zaw here is how ridiculously fast this heavy blade is. You can see that this is just my unbuffed standard combo speed, and it's fast. It's very quickly. That was just me pressing Q and nothing else. That's kind of the combo that I get from that. If I add in pressing, oh, forgive me, that was a heavy attack. If I add in pressing W, it changes my combo because of Tempo Royale. And we can see that in our melee combos. This is our Tempo Royale, and this is its stance. So of course we have our basic Q combo, which is the combo that I was talking about, just pressing Q a bunch while not pressing anything else. Pressing Q while pressing forward creates a different combo. Pressing Q and right click plus forward creates another combo. And then just recently they of course have added some slam attacks, which is just guard and Q. And then of course there's your basic slide attack. There's your in-air attacks, and also lastly you've got your wall dash and down aiming at a downed enemy, which is effectively just a finisher attack, is what they refer to those as. So yeah, that's my effective combos, and they are very effective. I don't want anyone to think that these are weak in any way. Crowdfall is just a basic attack. Let's go over it. So it's your heavy attack effectively, and you can achieve a heavy attack the same with just holding down your melee weapon button. So that is what it is. So I've shown off the first two parts of the combo. The final combo is of course blocking plus melee, and as you can see with Tempo Royale, it just makes you move forward exceptionally quickly. And this is affected by how fast your weapon is attacking. Meaning that because we have so much ridiculous speed on this heavy blade, we just move forward insanely fast. Very useful for taking out crowds or just going through hallways very quickly that are filled with enemies. The other attacks we of course have is our basic ground slam attack, which we can just spam right here. That's of course something they added in the melee update. Heavy attacks were always a thing, but now they're actually extremely useful because they scale off of how much combo multiplier you have. I believe the maximum is 8 combo multiplier is like the highest amount of damage you can deal. Yeah, so that's effectively what that is. You do also have the in-air combos, but they're not like, how do I put this? Not super effective. And then lastly, while aim gliding, in other words, blocking while in the air while using your melee weapon, will cause you to shoot out an Exodia Contagion Blade, which as you just saw is a ranged weapon or a ranged attack that does a decent amount of damage. I will show it off here in just a moment. But it's effectively just a interesting way to get a ranged attack on a normal melee weapon. That's why I like Exodia Contagion. So let's show off, I guess we'll show off the damage first. So there's a basic Jackal, max level. And this is how fast my Zaw can tear through a level 135 Jackal. We're just going to go at it as fast as possible. I'm just using normal Q combo. This is nothing unstandard. That was the normal Q combo, and that's how fast I was able to kill level 135 Jackal. Of course, if I had heavy attack near the end, I would have done even more damage because of the way heavy attack works. Yeah, as you can see, it does crazy amounts of damage, and then we're going to reset our combo there, and we're going to summon a bunch of packs of level 135, creating your heavy gunners, and show off just how much damage we can do to these guys and how quickly we can kind of eliminate them. So even on frames like Harrow and whatnot that are focused more on guns, we can still just do insane amounts of melee damage and just tear through these enemies. And our combo's 11. We're just gonna hit them. As you can see, we sent them sailing, did a massive amount of damage, and we can just kind of tear through them just so quickly. Some of them got knocked off there, but they, if this was a level, of course, they would still be counted as killed, so that still kind of counts. And that's just like our normal melee weapon. Of course, adding in the heavy attacks when you have a high combo does add in more damage, so you do want to do that if possible, since the melee changes. But even without the heavy attacks, you're just doing so much damage with a Zaw like this, like a heavy blade, with so much attack speed that it's kind of insane. Of course, you can get silly with it, and we're just going to resummon all those heavy gunners. And we're gonna use our slam attacks, which is just Q and block. And we're just gonna get silly with it and just keep doing this over and over. And we'll just get faster as we go along, and we'll just destroy them. This does a ridiculous amount of damage, even against high-level enemies. So it's not the most effective thing, but man, it's kind of funny to watch. We can, of course, use some of our other combos. We'll use our block forward combo, and that, of course, just destroys them just as quickly. We can even like launch them all around the map just as effectively. As you saw, they're just gone. We can use our basic combo into heavy attack, as I was describing. So we'll just go basic combo into heavy attack, and that ends them. These are level 135s, mind you, so that's just insane how quickly they can kill them. A good Zaw, or even just a good build for a melee weapon, is insane. Especially now since the changes. I really enjoy these changes, actually. The scaling with the combo multiplier plus the heavy attack consuming your combo multiplier to deal massive damage is really fun in practice. So if they continue the melee system the way it is, I think they'll be doing great things. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to really talk about melee weapons. I think that's really kind of it. Heavy blades are most certainly my favorite melee weapons, and that's pretty much the end of the story there, so Zaws were just kind of the smart choice. I guess that kind of ends this episode. We've kind of talked, or I've kind of talked, about what I wanted to. And in general, from here on out, if you don't want to hear me soapbox, then you can just stop the episode here. This is pretty much the end. If you do want to hear me talk about some alternatives to Harrow and, of course, my Zaw here, then you can continue to listen and hear me soapbox a little. So, alternatives to Harrow would probably be listed as, of course, Trinity. Trinity's a basic support frame. I hazard to recommend her to new players because she tends to be very focused on healing and nothing else. There's nothing exceptional about her kit, and there's nothing really interesting about her playstyle. It's mostly just healing. She doesn't do anything else. Harrow tends to be a very support-focused frame, but he also buffs his own ability to deal damage, and of course his teammates' ability to deal damage. Trinity's sole focus is healing, nothing else. She cannot buff her allies' damage. She doesn't do a lot of damage to begin with, but she is very good at what she does. Of course, another frame would just be Oberon. Oberon's just a fantastic frame all around. He's great at healing, great at surviving, great at dealing damage. He'd probably be my second pick over Harrow. And honestly, I think both of them are very close to each other in capabilities. I just went with Harrow this time around because he tends to be a very odd frame, and one I don't see used a lot, but he's very fun to play with. He's very, very fun to play as because of his second ability to buff your weapon reload speed and your fire rate on weapons that would be otherwise limited by that. You kind of take that limiter off, and you make yourself very powerful with those weapons. So yeah, that's my alternatives for Warframes. My alternatives for melee weapons would, of course, be any of the other heavy blades, but in particular, I'm a big fan of Galantine Prime, or just standard Galantine. They're both suited perfectly for the playstyle and the builds that I showed on my Zaw, because they have high crit, high status, they're very good damage focused, they're relatively quick. So Galantine and Galantine Prime are both great choices. Other good choices, I guess, would be Graham and Graham Prime. I don't currently have them in my weapons list because I never bothered to get a Graham Prime yet. I will probably soon. Graham and Graham Prime are great weapons in general. They focus more on damage, less on attack speed than the Galantine, but that doesn't necessarily limit them a whole lot. I think overall they're very strong. So if you wanted to use those instead of Galantine Prime or Galantine, then that would be fine by me. I think they're easily able to substitute it, and the attack speed would probably be well needed on something like Graham. So yeah, that kind of substitutes for melee weapons. Otherwise, I kind of think a Zaw is probably your best bet, regardless of what melee weapon you kind of prefer, because you can kind of build it to your own specifications and make your own monster, as they say. I've made my own Zaw that's just insanely fast and does a lot of damage up front, which is kind of what I was focused on when it came to melee weapons, and now I kind of have it. The ability to heal myself with it and do massive damage is a fantastic benefit to all my Warframes, really. Oh, I almost forgot. I did forget to show off Exodia Contagion, so I will show that off real quick. So this is Exodia Contagion. As you saw, it doesn't really do a lot of damage up front because I haven't really buffed it up, but it does do a status to a lot of enemies. So that's kind of one of the major reasons why you use it. It also is an AoE attack, so you can kill yourself with it, just be note. You can, let's see, can damage yourself, as you just saw. I damaged myself and gave myself viral, so just be aware of that. It's something fantastic to use against large groups of enemies, but against max level heavy gunners it really doesn't do the same. That's Exodia Contagion though. Yours, Arcane for your Zaw isn't like super critical. Some of them are pretty weak, some of them are slightly stronger, like Exodia Contagion, but they're not critical to the playstyle of the Zaw, because it's mostly a melee weapon. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. That should show off both of the builds fairly effectively, and all the builds I have are kind of similar to the builds that I've listed here. Volt kind of shows off my damage builds in kind of a nutshell. I focus on as much coverage as possible and kind of buffing the utility without like losing damage capability. For my tank frames, I always focus on as much survivability as possible, as seen in my Anaros build. And for my support frames, I focus on having like a good balance of all things, as you saw in my Harrow build. For my weapons, of course, I'm just purely front-loading damage. I don't really see any reason to focus on utility with the weapons, unless the weapon itself is like focused on utility, such as slightly the static core is kind of that way. But specialty builds tend to be rough. So any build that like doesn't really, or any weapon that doesn't really fit the builds that I've kind of outlined, typically tends to be a worse off weapon in my eyes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad weapon. You can make pretty much any weapon in Warframe work. Yeah, and there's tons of updates constantly happening with Warframe. There's tons of stuff going on. They've been just recently talking about, of course, the Rising Tide update and your Railjacks and all that. And there's the new war that will be coming out soon enough, which will introduce a lot of new enemies, I'm sure, and a lot of new events and stuff. I just kind of have, as of late, slowed down on playing Warframe as much, and that's kind of why I'm ending this series here, just because I'm not as interested in it as I previously was, and it kind of shows in some of my builds, specifically like the Exilus slots ones, because I haven't had a chance to farm of those, because I just haven't been playing Warframe that much. I would like to get back into it eventually, but it probably won't be for a while, and until I do, making more videos on the series or on the game would be kind of like disadvantageous because I don't really have enough preparation done. A lot of the quests in the other playthrough I was doing, of course, would take a lot of grinding, and I just don't have the time to do that at this current place, and a lot of the builds that I would like to show off are very similar to the builds that I've shown off here, so there's not a lot of variance, is what I'm trying to get at. And that just kind of means that what I've shown off is most of what I know, so I think it's a good place to end it for me, and that's why I'm doing it. So, until the next game, or whatever I decide to play after, goodbye.